Good evening. For those of you that do not know me, my name is Randy Pogue, and I have the honor and privilege to serve the residents of the city of Kearney as your mayor. Thank you for taking the opportunity to join us this evening as I'm provided the opportunity to have a discussion with you regarding a very important ballot initiative that we have November 2nd, 2021. Kind of the plan, the agenda for this evening is I will give a brief presentation and introduction. We'll go through some FAQs, some frequently asked questions on the topic, discuss some renderings and drawings of plans, and then open it up for some question and answers regarding the Kearney question for the use tax. We'll go ahead and move on with the frequently asked questions. These are hopefully going to answer some questions that you may have. I would like to mention that feel free to contact myself, any of your elected aldermen, or city staff if you have any specific questions on the use tax. As with anything, there's some false and misinformation out there. I would just encourage you to do your research, do your homework, and go straight to the source for that information. We'll start with what is a use tax. A local use tax that applies to a purchase of all goods made from out-of-state vendors, also known as a vehicle sales tax, must be adopted in order for the city to preserve current vehicle sales tax collections. In Kearney, if a resident buys a car in Overland Park tomorrow, the sales tax that you pay on that car is currently received by the city of Kearney. If a use tax is not adopted by a state-imposed deadline of November 2022, those funds will no longer be received by the city. Loss of this revenue source will have a negative impact on the city's budget if not approved by voters. How will the funds be spent? We've identified revenues generated by the passage of a use tax will be dedicated to police, pets, parks, and pathways. We've gone farther to identify specific projects that these funds will be dedicated to. That includes police. $150,000 will be allocated to hire 2 new police officers, vehicles, and equipment. $100,000 will allow Kearney to hire our first animal control officer and equipment. $200,000 will be identified and spent in parks with the creation of Hall Park, a park dedicated to our senior community, as well as addition to new pickleball courts. In the pathway portion, $150,000 will be dedicated to the Nation Road sidewalk from Cottonwood Creek Avenue north to Woodridge Road. I already pay sales tax. Is this the same thing? Absolutely not. The sales tax applies to purchases made at retail within Missouri, while the use tax applies to purchases made from out-of-state vendors. Purchases will never fall into both groups, and therefore you would never be taxed twice. It is one or the other, never both. So if you're paying a sales tax on an item, you will not pay a use tax, and the same can be said if you pay a use tax on an item, you will not pay a sales tax. It is not double taxation. What is the use tax rate? The use tax is imposed at the same rate as the total local sales tax rate, currently 3%. If the local sales tax rate is reduced or raised by voter approval, the local use tax rate shall also be reduced or raised by the same amount. It is the same rate. How much will the city of Kearney receive from a local use tax? In 2018, the Missouri Department of Revenue estimated that Kearney would have received approximately $600,000 if our use tax was in place. Why is the use tax important to Kearney business owners? Our local businesses invest in Kearney and employ our residents, yet they're required to pay a local sales tax, and large out-of-state vendors are not. Without a use tax in place, consumers have an incentive to purchase items from out-of-state vendors rather than shopping locally here in Kearney. The use tax will help level the playing field for our local businesses who do so much for our community. Sponsor our ball teams, donate meals to community events, The list goes on and on and on. This is a great opportunity for us to stand behind our local business owners who support our community. Why is it important to Kearney residents? The city relies heavily on revenues from local sales tax to fund the basic services that our residents expect and that they deserve. With the rise in e-commerce, the city is seeing a decline in sales tax growth. To keep in pace with this trend, the city must modernize our revenue source and continue to provide the essential services that our residents expect. Do other cities in Missouri have a use tax? Yes. Approximately half of all cities with a population of 2,000 or more people already have a use tax in place approved by voters. Some of those, our neighboring cities, include Gladstone, Liberty, Smithville, and Excelsior Springs. Clay County already has a use tax as well. If approved by voters, when will the use tax go into effect? It'll be April 1st, 2022. Use tax apply if I buy something from a Missouri vendor or retailer? No. The use tax does not apply to purchases made by Missouri residents from a Missouri vendor or retailer. Please remember the use tax only applies to out-of-state vendors when you would use it. Now that Amazon is collecting Missouri use tax, won't our city revenue increase? No. Only cities that have passed a local use tax can expect a revenue increase from Amazon sales. When will you vote on this question? You will vote on this question on November 2nd, 2021. I hope that provided an opportunity for you to learn and educate yourself and have some factual information on the importance of the use tax initiative and really what it's about. At this time, whether it's anybody here in the audience this evening that's with us here in City Hall, or if we have any participants via Zoom, I would like to go ahead and give you the opportunity to ask any questions of me, and from there we'll discuss some of the renderings and some of the specific projects in a little more detail. Are there any questions from the audience? Yes, ma'am.
Mayor, my question is, you had indicated that it would be parks, pathways, police vehicle and equipment, an animal use handler for the police department. My question is, how are you going to prioritize in the order that you will do these? How will I know how soon I'll get the senior park? How soon will we have the pathways? Do you already have an agenda?
Yeah, very, very fair question. And just as soon as the initiative would be passed by voters and we would know we'd have that estimated revenue stream, we've already done some work on, we have a detailed list that I'll go through here of several projects throughout the communities for the pathway piece. Our first project is the Nation Road Sidewalk project from Cottonwood Creek to Woodridge Avenue. That'll take the funding for the first year. As you can see, we have over a dozen of other priority projects for after the first year when these revenues still come in to prioritize funding for. Parks, building 12 new pickleball courts with a restroom area and a big expansion is going to cost a lot more than $200,000. So it'll give us funding to continue to pay that year after year to improve those facilities. So to answer your question, these projects, as far as that we've identified and have gone on the record for the 2 additional police officers and vehicles and equipment, a animal control officer vehicle and equipment, upgrades to the facility as well, the start of the pickleball courts and Hall Park and pathways, we're going to move on those right away. Now, obviously, things take time, but you're going to notice activity right away. There will be no delay. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Are there any other questions from the audience?
I see people, saying that we've already voted on this. Why are we doing this again? Can you explain maybe the process on how this got started, by the November vote? Was this a people-led, initiative to get it back on the ballot, or how did that come about?
Good question. So, unfortunately, it was unsuccessful on our last April ballot initiative. I take responsibility as mayor that the city, we did not do a good job of communicating, not only what a use tax is, but that it's two separate pieces. There's a vehicle sales tax piece, which we're currently collecting and will go away if we don't pass a use tax, because unfortunately that legislation is tied together. And then there's a use tax piece. Just this evening, a resident and former alderman gave me, Marie Steiner mentioned, you only get taxed on that use if you use it, right? And so, we didn't do a good enough job of communicating really, I feel, what it is, the importance of the piece that, if it's not passed, we're gonna lose that revenue, which that's a big portion of our budget. But we're also losing revenue every day by not having that use tax piece on it for the out-of-state vendor piece of it. So the feedback that we received from residents was, one, we really didn't know what it was, and two, we don't feel that you did a good enough job explaining what you're gonna do with the new revenues. So we worked together as a board and a staff with identifying to the penny where we're gonna spend these funds. But also there's a community-led committee called For Our Town that was established that realizes the importance of what this means for Kearney and are working to assist in a successful campaign as well. So I understand that voters, our residents said no. I feel some of them voted no because they didn't really understand what the question was. So we're working extremely hard we're not deaf to the fact, it's not that we don't care, we're not listening to our constituents and business owners, but it's obviously extremely important for the city and important enough where we are spending time to hopefully get it, a successful initiative November 2nd.
When you said to the penny, and I've seen this too, can you maybe generally outline what it costs for a police officer to the city every year? What is that salary plus the vehicle, plus the lights, sirens, equipment, all that stuff? Can you kind of generally tell us what that is?
Yeah, absolutely. So, average base salary for a police officer is roughly $38,000 to $40,000. Obviously, there's other expenses associated with that people sometimes take for granted. Benefits take roughly 35% of an employee's base salary and add that on top of it for employer-paid taxes, employer-paid medical insurance, all those benefit items. That comes at a cost. And so you're looking at vehicles of roughly $50,000 a piece. Our police department, like all of our departments, I feel the city of Kearney has done a phenomenal job being a good steward of taxpayer dollars. We've currently got vehicles that are 2013 vehicle model years. That they don't look that old. They maintain them very well and take very good care of them. Assistant Chief Hatfield's Cruiser is a 2013 with high miles. The vehicle's minimum of $50,000 by the time you buy it and equip it. So that's where how we identify for each one of these specific categories. We didn't just take the $600 and divide it. Staff and we took the time to really dive into it and figure out what it's going to cost to add the 2 additional police officers to vehicles. The pets piece, $100,000. What it would cost to hire an animal control officer. What it would cost to upgrade our current hold facility. What it would cost to increase our agreement with Dr. Lear, who currently holds vehicles after our 10-day period and stuff in our facility. And so animals, it's expensive, right? So when we hold them, we got to feed them, we got to take care of them, we got to provide that proper care. We had a lot of, and we still do get a lot of citizen feedback about stray animals and cats, and having that animal control officer position and having a safe place for them to be once we pick them up is a humane place is important. With the parks piece, it's we spent a lot of time on identifying the use of funds and really what it would cost for each category.
Mayor, I have another question. You had indicated, and the gentleman in the audience also indicated, that this has been on the ballot before, and it didn't pass. Because City Hall, you take responsibility that it didn't pass because you didn't let the community know what this use tax was for. Tell us what you're doing different this time that you didn't do the last time it was on the ballot. What are you doing to inform the citizens what they're voting for?
Sure. So last time we had open forums like we were having this evening. I was on the local radio station and was interviewed by the Courier Tribune. This time we're really identifying there's a vote. There's a group of residents that are working together. The city ourselves can't spend taxpayer dollars on vote yes initiatives. We can't spend taxpayer dollars on stuff like that. So what we've tried to do to do our part to communicate our plan better is to identify and communicate and respond the specific uses of the funds. We did not do that last time, to where I can be found quoted on 102.7 radio. We're talking about infrastructure and important things that are still important and that we need to address in the community. But I don't feel like we did a good enough job with a plan like we have now.
Okay. But I'm still not hearing what I want to hear. You're telling me what you're going to let us know, but how are you doing it? I mean, I understand the forums you're having here, but I had heard that there was going to be posters. I heard there's going to be a mailer. I heard that there's going to be yard signs, so that we can ask questions if we don't understand what this use tax. What is this mailer going to say to the residents that they're going to get this before the election? What information are you going to be able to give them now that you weren't able to give them then about the use tax, how it's going to be used?
So really the frequently asked questions and the information that the city has available is really the same. There's been no change there. The city's not involved with the I believe the political signs and stuff and the mailers you're talking about is coming from a Vote Yes campaign.
Okay.
The city cannot contribute money to that.
Right.
The city cannot be involved with that process, nor can any of the city employees. So specifically, I would refer you to the chairman of that committee for kind of their specific plans. I don't know what's going to be on the flyer, okay. But I am aware of the signs around the community that are supporting the initiative. When I mention, I take responsibility for what I feel is the city not doing a good enough job communicating our plan. The information's the same, except we're putting to the penny where we're going to utilize that funding.
Okay, one more question. You had indicated that we have $250,000 for parks, and we know that's not going to be enough for the pickleball court. And the Hall Senior Park. My question is, do you know how much it's going to cost? Do we have a plan? We know exactly how much the Hall Senior Park's gonna cost us, how much the pickleball court's gonna cost us, how much is the pathway's gonna cost us, so you know, because you said in 2018, you received the use tax was $600,000. If it were in place, we would have received that kind of money. So do we already know what each one project is going to cost the city?
We know, the police piece, we know the pets piece, and we're confident on the pathway piece based off of, we did the, Cedarwood sidewalk project. We did have an alternate bid, for that additional project that we didn't have funding for. That funding was provided by a grant. The parks piece is the piece that, we have not put it out to bid or anything. You know, we don't want to put the cart before the horse on that. But just based off of experience of redoing our park, our Lions Park here, and, you know, the $200,000, and if I said $250, I apologize, I misspoke. It is $200,000. So I don't know if I misspoke or what, but, that $200,000 would service debt potentially that would have to, you know, obligated to get both of those parks, done. So it's gonna take a lot more than $200,000 to do a park, let alone. So that would provide a revenue stream to fund debt service.
Thank you.
Are there any other questions from the audience? It looks like there's nobody on Zoom with questions. I'll go to the front of the podium here. If there are other questions. And as we mentioned, our you know, the pathway piece, there's a lot more than just one project, one area that needs attention in our community. We've kind of identified in an order of priority for safety for our residents, safe paths to school, safe, you know, paths to around the community, but then also the connectivity piece. So our first project would be, I'm going to turn this a little bit. The Nation Road connection, that's the Cedarwood subdivision to the hills of Westwood. As I mentioned, where the Dogwood Elementary School is, down Cedarwood Parkway and Nation Road, we already received grant funding. That sidewalk's in place with the improved crosswalk. This connectivity here would totally connect the Cedarwood subdivision to the Hills of Westwood subdivision into this whole part of the community around Sandbar Drive. Our second would be a connector on Sandbar Drive, the subdivision here to the rest of the industrial park that's already sidewalked all the way through town. So that would then connect everything on the west side of the community under I-35. Our third sidewalk project would be a sidewalk down Regency Drive, the original part of this neighborhood here. On neither side of Regency Drive has a sidewalk. Currently, kids are walking in the road, riding their bikes in the road, going to school. That would be our priority there, would be to a sidewalk project from Regency Drive to where they would obviously connect Shadowbrook and Regency to 19th Street, the trail system itself. Our next one would be the Mac Porter Park connection, and that would be a connector that would go from the sidewalk at the Senior Center under I-35 with a safe crosswalk and connect to the Mac Porter Park. That would essentially connect all of our trails together. You could, whether it's on a sidewalk or a city street, be able to ride your bicycle, walk with your dog or family through all of our trail system. How cool would it be if my son, who lives over by the high school, would be able to safely ride his bike to Jesse James Park, safely ride his bike to Matt Porter Park. The next identified would be the North Grove corners. And so there is, from the James Point subdivision on Grove Street, a section of sidewalk that is missing there. North Jefferson sidewalk, that is right here, we're literally just west of City Hall. That would go from essentially Dollar General south to Main Street area. And then the Stone Lake Drive connection. So right to where off 19th Street, Stone Lake Drive, to that neighborhood where the last home was built, there's a gap where you have to walk in the street or grass to get to 19th Street to the trail system. So once again, that connects Stone Lake subdivision and the southwest portion of Stonecrest to the 19th Street trail system, once again, just opening up that connectivity. The Stonecrest Drive connection, just a little east of there from, I think it's 16th or 15th Street, south on the west side of Stonecrest Drive, behind 6 or 8 homes, there is a section of sidewalk there missing. So I think it's important to communicate that obviously some of these projects aren't big. So we've got a big list, and the list will continue. There's going to always be a need for additional improvements. Hopefully, depending on funding and costs, we can't, guarantee what the cost of concrete is going to be 2 years from now, unfortunately. But, potentially we can move on more than one of these a year. East 92 Highway Sidewalk Extension, that is here in front of the Merrimack Golf Course. So, from the Merrimack Villa area, to extend that all the way east towards Muddy Fork, towards the Methodist Church. And then the Dovecot connection, that is down here south of the junior high, south of the elementary. Now we have the whole Dovecot subdivision on its final phase. There's a large missing piece of sidewalk there to where these kids, if they walk to school or want to walk to the tennis court, walk to the football game, wherever they want to go, they do not have a safe path. The Senior Center crosswalk, that's adding an additional improved crosswalk in front of the Senior Center by James Point. And then the 19th Street crosswalks. Like we added the additional crosswalk last year on 19th Street, and that additional sidewalk for the connectivity for the Brookhaven subdivision, improving all the crosswalks on 19th Street. 19th Street is a very busy carrier road, and looking to improve the crosswalks for pedestrian safety there. So those are our identified and priority use tax pathways projects currently, and we would tackle them in that order. And here is a rendering of what the area on Nation Road in front of the Hills of Westwood would look like if that sidewalk's not there currently. But, I mean, just a total safe sidewalk where you could walk with your family, walk your dog, kids could ride their bikes to school, just totally provide a safe route to school. Any questions on this piece? We do have some handouts. If anybody would like a copy of this, we can definitely send you home with a copy of that as well. I do want to mention that if you would want to reference any additional information, you could go to the City of Kearney's website, kearneymo.us. On the top title bars, there is one called Use Tax. And it has essentially the same frequently asked questions that I went through this evening on there. I had recorded on a video, as well as some additional information. That really concludes my presentation this evening. We have about 30 more minutes. I'm happy to stick around and answer any other questions that you may have. Yes, sir.
Not so much a question, but a comment. I'd like to say that I think the four concepts have been very well thought through. They're not all things that are going to get accomplished day one, but it's a good look to the future of the community and one that can be achieved with this funding stream. That's important that we all understand. It won't happen tomorrow. It will happen, but this funding stream is vital to keep this community going forward and all these nice amenities.
I agree. That's a good message. Thank you.
Question, based on all the people that were at the pickleball court, maybe the next meeting should be down there.
Be down at the pickleball court.
It was really full.
You know, I thought that was going to be a fad, just to be honest, but it's not. I played it several times myself, and I'm not that great, but it's so much fun, and you know, there's people young and not so young playing against each other, having a good competitive game, and they've done an amazing job with the leagues down there, and I'm really excited for the possibility of being able to give them some more room because they need it. Brian, I think we'll wait just a couple more minutes to make sure nobody else hops on Zoom, and then I'll stick around, but we can probably kill Zoom here in probably 3 minutes.
Having these, I think it's important that you at least make the knowledge available. Be willing to stand up there and talk about it.
Yeah, I appreciate each one of you attending. All good questions. You know, it's obviously very important to get factual information out to our voters. I want everybody to be educated when they go to the polls. So, fortunately, there is some misinformation out there. I've seen and been made aware of. And just once again, would encourage anybody to come straight to the source. Come talk to me. Come talk to one of your elected aldermen. Come talk to the city administrator. If we don't have an answer, we'll get back to you. But we've worked extremely hard to provide a plan to show the importance of this need.